write to you separately,
Of
so we don't extend the meeting too long. Members of Herefordshire for Europe expect the government to keep its election promises about achieving a good, mutually beneficial trade deal with the European Union, which is by far our largest trading partner. The Prime Minister told us that an oven-ready deal was available when he signed the withdrawal agreement. It is the lack of time that leads us to raise our concerns over no deal now. We're not here to debate the merits or otherwise of Brexit, as we know that we have left. And like you, we want the best for Herefordshire as we go forward. And we would like to discuss what you think that requires. The format of the meeting is that a participant will ask one question, and if they feel it's necessary, one supplementary. We only have 5 questions in total because of the limited time. Are you happy for us to go to the questions, or would you like to say anything to us first? Well, we can't hear you, Mr. Wiggin. No, we've lost you, I'm sorry. Can you hear us? Yeah, unfortunately, we can't hear you. No, oh dear. Mr. Wiggin, we can't hear you, unfortunately.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Yeah, there's a mute button disguised in my headphones.
Right.
So I apologize for that. Just to answer your question, first of all, I completely understand why the Prime Minister promised an oven-ready deal. The deal is called the deal that we do with Canada. The EU already does that deal. And the problem we've got is that we are asking for an identical deal and they are not giving it to us. And I think it's quite helpful for you all to appreciate that we all want a deal, and we all want the deal that's best not only for the UK, but good for the Europeans, as we are their biggest customer. And as you say, we do most business. But we can't make people do a deal with us, even if they're doing it already with Canada, even if we already comply with all the laws because we're already in the EU or were in the EU. So it does take 2 to tango, and I think we need to appreciate that. That's all I wanted to add.
That's fine, Mr. Wiggin. Thank you. The first question.
Oh, and please call me Bill.
Okay, will do. And I'm Tom. First question is from Richard, and this is specifically on the rule of law, but the following questions will be more specific. Richard, would you like to go ahead? Or Richard, we can't hear you. No. No, we can't hear you, Richard. Mr. Wiggin, I'll put the question to you.
It's because Richard's still on
okay.
mute.
Try now.
Yes,
try
I
now,
can
Tom.
hear you.
Tom,
Yes,
can you hear me? I
Yes,
don't know
we can
how
hear
I
you.
was muted there. Okay. Hi, Bill. Thanks for coming. Thanks for talking. My question is really, well, we all try to be good citizens and follow the rule of law as much as we can in our lives and expect other people to do the same. And that's the way life is in Britain and has been all my life. And therefore, I was very concerned to hear, I think it was one of the ministers saying that they were talking about breaking international law. And that is obviously a concern. If we're all told as citizens follow the law, and everybody does follow the law, we have someone standing up from the government benches and saying they are, dare I say, threatening to break international law. Could you just say something about that, please?
Yes, you're not. Throughout your life, you've obeyed the rule of law, as indeed we all do. We don't necessarily obey international law. And I mean, I think that the difference is that the treaty that international law applies to is the withdrawal agreement. And the purpose of the withdrawal agreement was that both sides should play nicely. And that's what we all want as British people. We want the EU to do the deal. We want our government to do the deal. And that's why in the withdrawal agreement is this requirement to act in good faith. And if the EU do not act in good faith, there is an appeal process. But by the time you've gone through the appeal process, you will find that there are real problems for the unity of the United Kingdom. And I think the example that everyone quoted was that we wouldn't be able to send food to Northern Ireland. Now, obviously, nobody would have envisaged a situation like that. Nobody, and rightly so. It's completely ridiculous. But the government is obliged to say that if the deal isn't done, we will not be forced by the withdrawal agreement to be prevented from feeding our own people in Northern Ireland. And therefore, I think that what you saw with that ministerial answer from Brandon Lewis was part of our negotiations, the saber rattling. I don't think we will ever break international law through breaching this treaty. But if we do, it will be for a very good reason and because the EU have not acted in good faith. I think it's also worth pointing out that a lot of other countries break their treaties, Germany, France, all sorts of countries, and we shouldn't equate that with criminal law, which you and I wouldn't ever want to break. Is that helpful?
It certainly was. Yeah, yes. I mean, I suppose because it's a contract and it was signed by both parties, then well, it would appear that if one party is unilaterally threatening to say that they might be breaking that contract,
it is.
I don't know. Does as far as the reputation of this country is concerned, would that have been sort of a particularly good tactic to use in negotiation?
I personally wouldn't necessarily have said it if I'd been Brandon Lewis, but I think that it actually may have had the desired effect. And I think all of us who want to see that deal will know that Ursula von der Leyen spoke to the Prime Minister last Saturday. And I think that, and again, you may know more than me on this, but my sense is that Europe wants to do a deal with us too, and that their negotiating position has been extraordinarily aggressive. And because of that, we rattled our sabers back, and suddenly the rest of the EU said, no, look, stop this nonsense and get on with making a sensible deal for everybody. So although I don't like the way we've achieved it, I think it may have been very helpful.
Okay, thank you, Bill, for that.
Okay, thank you.
Next one is question is from Guy, and specifically to do with no deal on agriculture, which is a concern for all of us in Herefordshire.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Pleasure.
Just really want to, we all, as you said at the beginning, are working for a deal. So that's, I think, a given for all of us, I think certainly here. So really wanted to focus on a couple of aspects around the possibility of there being a no deal and the consequences, particularly for farming and not least in Herefordshire, if there were to be no deal. And as we know, I think for both our sheep and our beef industries, particularly in this county, but across the country, something between 80 and 90% of our exports go to EU countries. And the NFU and the Country Landowners and Business Association have both used words like catastrophic of no deal in relation to farming particularly. I noted that you, on a different subject, disagreed with the NFU yesterday in Parliament, but on this matter...
It's the same people at the NFU who use those expressions, though.
Indeed, but on this matter, that they say, and Bill Kwan, not least here in Herefordshire, that a no deal would be disastrous for farming in Herefordshire and nationally. Do you agree with them on that?
Not really. I think that there are several different options, if you like. So you're right, our sheep exports do go to France predominantly. And if they were to stop that, yes, on the face of it, that would be a disaster for our shepherds. However, the bit that we mustn't forget is that we are not self-sufficient, and we could both eat the lamb and pay our farmers who are suffering because of the collapse of their market. So although a no deal could be disastrous, just because we have no deal doesn't mean it has to be disastrous. And you may accuse me of dancing on the head of a pin there, but we know who the shepherds are. Every sheep has a number. Every shepherd is recognized, and we know how many sheep they sell. We know where they go. It's a very regulated market. So if we had to step in and pay for the damage done by no deal, I think we could manage that. I think you look at the imports of beef from Northern and Southern Ireland in particular, from the Republic, you would see the beef price go through the roof if there was no deal. So I have a different view on beef, but certainly my advice to shepherds has been that they are at the most vulnerable part of agriculture. I think we got to remember we sell £22 billion worth of food to the EU and export that much. So it is a big deal. And I don't think that market will automatically be filled by other people. So I think one of the things we should prepare ourselves for is that if they do go into the bluff calling phase at the end of this period and there is no deal, the question for all of us will be, for how long are we prepared to not do business without tariffs with the EU? And my hope would be that the negotiations will not stop and we will continue to negotiate, as indeed I think we will if we do get a deal, because life will go on, things will change, and they and we will want to alter elements of that deal. So nothing is ever going to be set in stone ever again, and those negotiations will be ongoing. So I have a different perspective in terms of how long the disaster, if it is, will last and how easy it is to mitigate. And the answer is that hopefully it will be a short-term blip and that it is something we can mitigate. And if I'm wrong and it's a longer-term blip, then some of the impacts on trade that tariffs will be actually quite positive to Britain. We will find that we actually collect more than we pay. So it's not really in their interests or in ours for having to have this. But if we do, then, and we start to take in more money than we're paying out, then we can use that for people like shepherds who are having the bad side of that no deal solution. There's quite a lot I've passed on there. Was that okay? Or do you want me to go back over any of it?
No, that's very helpful. Perhaps just a quickie. I mean, obviously the NFU and the Country Landowners and Business, they are the premier farming organisations, representative organisations in the country. So I'm quite sort of intrigued that you have a different view from theirs. Would you be, I mean, perhaps you already have, but would you be willing for some kind of open debate, either double articles in the Hereford Times or a more public face-to-face? I mean, it's very interesting that you do take a different view from the ones that they have pushed quite strongly.
Why don't we wait and see what happens first? We haven't got very long to wait. Let's see what happens, because actually what I think most people will be more interested in is what the government can do to help if things don't turn in the way that we all hope that they will.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bill. Next question, Tony. Would you like to ask Green Deal? Oh, can't hear you.
I can't see a Tony.
Jill's not with us, Tom.
No, I know. I said it's just Tony.
All right. Yes, I'm unmuted now.
Yes, Tony's unmuted.
Okay. Good evening.
Got you, Tony. Yep.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Yeah, some couple of points. Wider thing, really. First of all, is about if there is no deal, what plans are being made. Now, I mean, it's normal to do a risk assessment or a risk plan. And we're wondering if you were aware whether Herefordshire had done such a plan. And if not, would you be recommending that Herefordshire Council actually undertake a risk assessment?
First of all, I think there will be a deal. So I think that we should be more optimistic than pessimistic. And I think that it's in everybody's interest to be told that there isn't going to be a deal. You know, let's frighten the people, let's prepare them for the worst. So we're not going to necessarily get an upbeat message at this stage. But I think when you look at the situation, it's in the EU's interest. We are their biggest customer. It's in our interest. We want to keep on doing business with them, and we all want to live together, because even though we may have left the EU, we haven't left Europe. So I am much more optimistic. Secondly, the disaster scenario that requires risk assessments and plans, again, I don't see it in the same way as perhaps you do, and I'm sorry about that. And therefore, I don't think the impacts will be felt in the way that a local authority could make a realistic plan. But if there are plans, I haven't been privy to them, and I wouldn't necessarily be told what we were doing. Although I do know that Chris Grayling made some plans, and he got pilloried for those. So perhaps that's why we're not privy to these things.
Okay, that's answered that. Okay. The other part of my question was about the European Green Deal. I don't know if you've come across this at all. I mean, you must have heard of it, I guess. We were lucky enough as a group to have a presentation from two individuals who had been part of that a few days ago, and it looks like a really good idea. Now, I know the government, this government is very keen on green things, and this the European Green Deal is a ready-made, very effective looking plan in order to begin to use things like a circular economy, and it looks at farming, it looks at finance, it looks at everything. So I wondered if you were aware of it, and if you are, then do you think we would be able to incorporate some of that Green Deal in our own government? We don't have to do it the European way necessarily, but it's a plan that's there and it looks pretty good.
So I'm not familiar with the details of the European Green Deal, but because we've all been part of the same environmental agenda as Europeans, they have a slightly different approach to, say, grass as a carbon capture and storage element in the way in which they'll fund agriculture, to perhaps how we're going to interpret it here. For me, there isn't a great deal of opportunity to do things significantly differently if you're trying to save the planet. We've all got to cut our carbon emissions, and I know the government is keen to do that. So I don't see that even if we were to try to do it very differently, we will actually end up doing very different things. I don't think it's going to be possible. There's only so much we can do, and it's just a nuance issue that may separate us. But as I said, I haven't got the details in front of me, so I can't pick individual things to say, yes, we'll definitely do that, or no, we won't. I could apologize. I didn't know you were going to ask me that.
Well, all I can do is recommend it.
Fair enough.
Look forward, hopefully, to the government actually going along those lines, because it's
I think we won't be far apart, because we've all signed up to the Paris Agreement. So even if we are different in nuance, we're not going to be significantly different. And we do have different land requirements because we've got more populated, more densely populated country. But I don't think we can be significantly far apart.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Bill. We now have a question from Jill, who just joined us. Jill, are you in position to be able to ask your question? Do you need unmuting?
There, I think I've unmuted, have I?
Yes,
Yep.
Yes, you have. Yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Wiggin, and my apologies for not being on the call at the beginning. I'm actually in just at Hay on Wye in a community centre learning about some things. So I've popped out of the meeting, which should have finished an hour ago. So I apologise that it got a bit complicated. What I wanted to ask you about was, is it clear to you that if there is no deal, it's not that we just continue on the 1st of January as though it was still the 31st of December? Things do actually change very radically, not because we've suddenly torn up the entire rule book, but because we can no longer shelter in being part of a club when it comes to trading with the rest of the world. So we will actually have to obey WTO rules. And WTO rules say that you cannot discriminate against anybody. So, who's also trading with you on WTO rules. So that would, for example, it would mean that we and Germany and we and India would have to be trading on the same rules. So we wouldn't be able simply to go on applying European Union law to anything that came in from Germany, but looking at every consignment from India in a much more detailed way. And I mean, I'll come on to what I think this might mean, but I wonder if you agree with me with the basic premise.
I think the EU is part of the WTO, and what will change is that we will have a seat on the WTO in our own right, instead of being part of the EU's WTO team. And therefore, we will continue to behave within WTO rules, just as the EU does. So that the idea that it's going to be different for Germany is not true. They're part of the WTO within the EU.
Sorry, that's not actually the case. At the moment, we trade with Germany on EU rules, and that makes it much simpler. So, for example, we do not have to test medicines that come to us from Germany, because we all apply the same test. We manufacture to the same level.
No, that's not quite right. I'm so sorry. That's not quite right. And the reason I dived in, and forgive me, is because even Germany is part of the WTO. What we have is different thresholds. And I think that's important, because your fear is that we will treat the whole world the same as soon as we've left without a deal. Actually, we'll treat the whole world the same if we have a deal as well. We're always going to be under WTO. No. It's just the derogation.
Yeah, we have been part of WTO for the last 43 years. So has Germany. But that's right. We are not just part of WTO. We have a special agreement with them.
Mary, I think we've
lost
frozen there.
On a much.
Oh no, you came back.
Sorry, can you get me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Anybody that you have a better deal than a WTO deal, you can trade on preferential terms.
That's right.
And that's what the EU is about. We will not be able to go on trading with the EU on preferential terms after the 1st of January if there is no deal. We will have to treat them like we have to treat every other WTO partner. So all the preferential deals we have in place today, like we don't have to test every batch of medicine, will cease to apply, because if we applied it to the EU countries, India could very rightly take us to a WTO panel and say, you are discriminating against us because now the whole of the EU is on the same terms with you as us, but you are testing our medicines and you're not testing theirs. And we would have no defense. And indeed, Liz Truss has said this. So we are in a situation, at least my understanding, is that we will be in a situation where things we could do on 31st of December, we will not be able to do on the 1st of January without risking the ire of the Americans, the Chinese, the Indians, the Brazilians, etc., etc. So I think that is an aspect of no deal that hasn't received the attention it might have done. And I would be very grateful if you would check whether my facts are right and perhaps drop us a line after this meeting, because it is my understanding from a fair amount of experience that what I've just said is true.
Okay, so what I think you've said is true, but I don't think it's the whole story. And I think the reason that it's not the whole story is that the EU is not being taken to court by America or China because we are not checking medicines amongst one another. And we are checking Chinese or American or Indian medicines. And so whether we're in the EU or whether we're outside the EU, we will comply with WTO rules unless we have preferential agreements, as you call them, but actually they are derogations from the WTO
which
rules.
we do with the EU
Jill.
at the moment, so we don't have to.
Okay.
Jill,
Sorry.
I think we need to stop.
And Jill, I'm not going to write to you after this meeting, but if you email me with your specific questions, then I can respond to those individually. Is that fair enough? Because I don't have your details, so I need you to email me.
I think we've lost Jill
Sure.
again. We have one more question, Bill. Is that okay? I know the person who wants to ask it is Harriet, and she has particular concerns about it. It's to do with EU citizens in the UK.
Yes, please go ahead, Harriet. You have to unmute.
Yeah, have you unmuted?
Yeah, is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so thanks, Bill, for your time. I'm sorry to go over. Okay, my question regards the rights of EU citizens in the UK. And and specifically, I'm thinking about the settled status. Amendment 18 to the immigration bill was passed in the House of Lords on the 6th of October, obliging governments to provide EU citizens with physical proof of their settled status. And I have written you an email dated on the same day, the 6th of October. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Digital proof of settled status I know already exists, but cannot be accessed by the citizens themselves at any moment. And moreover, we've seen how much misery glitches in our computer systems can cause. So my question is, will you support the new clause 8 when it returns to the Commons?
I don't know. What I don't know yet, because I haven't got your email in front of me. I will, of course, look at it carefully. What I would say is that we have done more for our EU citizens here than the EU has done for British citizens over there, wherever they may be in Europe. We've made the settled status free, which is not the case elsewhere. And I think we should be quite proud of our track record in welcoming people who have chosen to live in the UK. 3.5 million compared to the 1 million that have gone the other way. So yes, of course, I'll look at everything. I think it's good because I think it sends a very clear message that whilst we don't want to be part of the EU, we do want to be Europeans and we want to be good to the people who want to live here. So I take your point about how difficult we make it. And I think that the government's been pretty clear that it doesn't want to make it difficult. And the fact that we've had 3.5 million people register, EU citizens registering to be able to stay in the UK is a pretty good endorsement of that intention.
Yes, however, this is just a point of making this backup physical, a biometric card or a piece of paper that they can show, because if it's only on a computer and the citizen themselves can't use it, can't find it when they need it, then
you're worried about a Windrush type thing.
Yes, exactly, and that's what I put in the letter. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I don't think that the government wants to repeat the Windrush story. I think that the ability, I mean, what I don't think we want to do is an identity card, because we've chosen not to go down that route. So what would you like in terms of a stamp in your passport or something like that? What would be the best thing, do you think?
That could be a possibility, though I think a card would be better, a plastic card.
Quite easy to fake.
Pardon?
Quite easy to fake.
Well,
yeah. So we've got people arriving in little rubber boats all the time, illegally, and we don't really want to encourage an industry in fake cards when we do want to keep good people who've applied legitimately for their right to remain. So I'm open to suggestions, but I think a card creates problems of its own.
I meant a card like say the driving license, that cannot be faked easily.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
it can. But anyway, I take your point, and I don't think that there's a reluctance. But that is that enough on that? I haven't got clause 8 in front of me to check though.
Okay, yes, okay. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very
Well,
much.
we've asked our 5 questions, Bill, and thank you once again for the time that you've given to us. We did agree to be 20 minutes, and you've kindly overrun by to half an hour, which we do appreciate. I think, just in summary, I think we'll certainly be reassured to hear you believe there will be a deal, because I think that's very important to the nation. But we hope it'll be a good deal, which benefits the country as a whole. And you also expressed the view you don't think we'll break international law unless it's we have to feed our citizens in Northern Ireland, which again I think is positive. But I think we all feel very strongly that we should keep the law internationally and both at home.
We've got a good record on that, and we don't want to break it. But essentially, it was the British backstop, and like the European backstop, none of us really want to get to the stage where we have to use it. And this is why it's very frustrating, I think, for all of us, on whichever side of the argument you are, because the next debate should be how good the deal is and whether it's better for us or better for them, instead of whether we're going to have a deal or not, because this is cutting your nose off to spite your face territory. And I don't think anybody really benefits from that kind of politics.
And I think the other point I'd like to make is that Tony raised the point about the Green Deal, and I think we're all very concerned about the environment, and anything we can do to try and improve our environmental environment in the UK can only be beneficial. And if we can learn something from Europe, I think we should take advantage of it.
Or we may be able to do it even better. Who knows? I have one appeal to you. In your name, a leaflet was put out during the general election, which attacked me personally. It was on the verge of against electoral law, which is a criminal offence. And I know that the police were called and certain members of Herefordshire for Europe were interviewed. I would say that I've always been willing to engage with you, and I will continue to do that because I can understand that you have proper beliefs, well held and politely put across. But I would urge you to stop people putting out leaflets that border on illegality at the next election, particularly if you could possibly manage to do that. I'd be most grateful.
Yeah, I think emotions ran very high prior to the election, and I hope we demonstrate.
But Richard's right about the rule of law.
Yeah, and I hope we demonstrate tonight that we can behave in a manner which is both polite and making hopefully a contribution. And certainly it'll be next election is some time away.
I hope so.
And,
we should have settled all this by then.
I'm sure there'll be new faces by then, Bill.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm always willing to engage, and I think debate's proper and good. And I think we all benefit from remembering that we're British and that we want the best for our country. And we may disagree on what that is or how to get there, but that doesn't damage in any way our passions for what is best.
Well, thank you again for talking to us. We do appreciate that. And if you'd like to leave the meeting, we'll obviously like to talk about what you've said to us. And thank you very much again for your time.
Bless you all. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.